over 25,000 international student athletes, or ISAs, are currently enrolled and competing at NCAA member institutions. Despite active recruitment of international student athletes, internationalization is not a strategic priority of athletic departments. This leads to a lack of support during the ongoing acclimatization process of ISAs, including understanding the cultural gaps, academic advising, mental health support, and postgraduate career decisions. This session will provide a comprehensive and inclusive approach for administrators, coaches, and campus partners to assist their international student athletes towards their holistic development. Our presenters today are Dr. Ashlesha Lokhande with the NCAA and Dr. Kristal McGreggor, Associate Director of Athletics, Student Athlete Success, and Strategic Initiatives at Peay State University.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Happy National Girls and Women's in Sports Day. This is a pleasure to be here today as former international student athletes and female student athletes. As she mentioned, my name is Dr. Ashlesha Lokhande. My pronouns are she and her, and I serve as the Assistant Director of Inclusion at the NCAA. My major focus of work is women and gender equity, but as I am a former international student athlete, I always get asked to work on international student athlete inclusion as well. So super excited to be here today. I used to play tennis a long time ago. If you ask me today, that's a tough job. But I'm from India, and I came to the United States when I got recruited to play tennis at the collegiate level at Arkansas State University.
Thank you. Hi, and I'm Dr. Kristal McGreggor, and I serve as the Associate AD for Student Athlete Success and Strategic Initiatives at Peay State University. So pretty much just overseeing everything academic, student athlete development. Former international student athlete, originally from Jamaica, born and raised. That picture there is actually during my JUCO days at Bronx Community College in New York, and then went on to Hampton University, where I also did track and field there. But yeah, so super excited to be here just to talk about different things that we can do for international student athletes. Okay, so we're gonna play a game. We're not just gonna sit and, you know, y'all look at us, we're gonna play a game, right? So if you could just take your phones out, and I want you to scan this QR code, right? And what I want you to do is just using one word, if you could describe how you felt when you first visited a foreign country. About 2 summers ago, I went to Punta Cana, and it was great because my friends were there and everything, but the language barrier, I had no idea what was happening, but it was a good time, right? So my answer would have probably been like, overwhelmed. Right, so we see wonder, excited, overwhelmed, disoriented, I'm right there with you. Anyone else? Yeah, nervous, Curious, yeah. Good, I love that. So this right here is super helpful because I'm gonna show you the connection. So what we did before coming here, we reached out to several international student athletes and pretty much asked them the same question, right? And we said, using one word, describe how you felt when you first migrated to the United States. And they said, anxious, excited, nervous, happy, disoriented, right? See, similar situation happening, right? And so this is what happens when an international student athlete is getting ready to come to the United States, right? Think about having to pack pretty much your entire life in 1 or 2 suitcases, and you're coming to a different country and you have no idea what's gonna happen. You know no one, you probably only know the coach that recruited you, right? And so all these feelings and thoughts, these right here, it means something. We went further though to ask them, all right, we saw how you felt during when you first got here, you know, you get an opportunity to come to America to get an education, but tell us, using one word, how did you feel after your first semester, right? Your first year. And some did, you know, were still excited, overwhelmed, all that good stuff. But then we had some that they were stressed, they were lonely, right? Some were confident, hopeful, exhausted, right? And so as they made that transition to the US, now you see like things, it's being a little bit different. You had some students that one word couldn't really fit their experience, right? And right here, there's a kid that one student said, my first year was tough. I was getting sick frequently. I fainted twice in practice. My hair fell out, my skin broke out, and I had no money to take care of the basic needs, right? Those are some of the challenges that international student athletes tend to face. Another student said, I didn't have a great connection with my coach. I felt like when we connected during the recruitment process, but once I got here, it felt like he didn't care, right? And then someone else said, I didn't want to mess up my scholarship because that's all I had to hold on to, right? And sometimes I could resonate with this student right here because I felt like when I first came here, one, you don't want to be the person from the community back home that you return back home to Jamaica, and they'll be like, what happened? Why, you finished with college already? No, right? You don't want to be that person, right? But also, you don't want to lose that scholarship because that's what's giving you that opportunity to get an education. For some of our international student athletes, they're first-generation students, right? And so that's super meaningful for our students. So we just wanted to share this with y'all so you could kind of get a sense of how some of our international student athletes tend to feel.
Thank you. So since I work for the NCAA, I had to bring some data in, right? We had to learn what's going on here. So we have over 25,000 international student athletes right now from different countries, different sports. What we see here is there has been a trajectory. It was going pretty good. Then 2020 hit, and then we had a slight dip, probably because of COVID. Student athletes went home, did not come back, or did not come here at all because of the COVID restrictions. So slight dip, but it's moving up at the Division I and as Division II level right now. So we see that numbers are going up. So we're going to see more and more international student athletes come up. And in the past, international student athletes were simply Olympic sports, maybe one or two from other different sports. But now you see you have more of the basketballs, even football, baseball student athletes that are coming from different countries as well. You have softball, lacrosse, volleyball, all of those things. So you see that it's no longer just the tennises and the golfs that are getting international student athletes. So that's why it's important to make sure we have a diverse understanding of how we can help them because they are from different sports as well. So why should we care? Because we have 25,000 of them here, right? But also because each one of them come with unique challenges. So I'm not going to go through each one of these, but we will talk a few here and there as well. It starts before they even get here to the United States. It starts when they're being recruited. So, fun story, when I was being recruited, my coach called me at 2 a.m. because she didn't realize the time difference. So my first recruiting call was at 2 a.m. And then somehow she kept calling me around the same time. And I'm like, I just woke up in the middle of the night. So understanding that recruiting process for international student athletes and domestic student athletes is different. The first time they may come to the United States is when they're coming for college, not on their official visit. So they already have a different idea of what college is, or may not know what that is either. Application process is also different. They have to provide additional documents, and that's tough, not knowing what you need to give. Then you have the visa thing, right? You've applied, you've got into the college, now you have to go and get your visa. Every country is different. Every US embassy in every country is different. Their wait time is different. You have to provide your documents, your personal documents, your financial documents, your application, you've been accepted, all of these documents when you go for your visa appointment. And then you may or may not get your visa, right? And that's gonna continue happening even more now. So how do you assist your student athletes with that as well? And then travel. If you're coming to the United States with your 2 suitcases, as Kristal said, who's gonna come pick you up, right? So who are you putting in charge of that person so they feel like they are welcomed and they have a place to go? So it starts even before they get here. And they get here, and then they could face other challenges as well. Nutrition. I grew up with home-cooked Indian food every single day. And then I came here, and I'm eating in the cafeteria. And my practices were in the evening, So by the time I went to the cafeteria, the only options I had was pizza and cereal. So that's the only thing I can have before going to dinner. So how am I going to have a nutritious diet as a student athlete if I'm not getting that in the cafeteria, right? Time zones. If I call home right now, my mom is not going to answer because it's probably 2 a.m. in the morning. So that's what happens with student athletes as well. They have tight schedules, and then they don't feel connected to their community because they may not be able to call at a time that their families are available. So how do they stay connected with their people as well? Weather, of course, if you have a person like me coming from a tropical country to Colorado, that's not going to be fun, right? So that, as well as accommodations. If you're coming straight from home and you're now in a dorm, I was very lucky. I had an incredible roommate who was on my tennis team from Trinidad, still one of my closest friends. I was a maid of honor in a wedding, her child's godmother. But that doesn't always happen with all the student athletes, right? What if they don't get along with their roommates because there's cultural differences, language barrier, whatever it is, right? So you gotta think about that. Then you have the culture shock piece as well. Obviously, we know the language barrier might be an issue. Social interactions based on cultural differences could be an issue. Relationship with authority. And I say that because I couldn't find a different word for it, but I had an interesting experience when I was working in academics with two student athletes from the same sport. One person was like, I don't like you telling me what to do, right? So he did not like me for a good year. And so finally, when his coach and I sat with him and we were like, okay, what's the issue here? He came from a very patriarchal culture, and in his culture, women don't tell men what to do. Well, all I'm telling you to do is go to class and be on time. So we had to get to a point where he understood whatever I was telling him was for his own good, right? On the flip side, I had a student athlete that every time I told him to do something, he would say, yes, ma'am. Or I would ask him, hey, what do you want to major in? These choices. He's like, you tell me. And I'm like, no, this is your life. Choose, But for him, he came from a culture where mom and grandma were the people in the family, right? And whatever mom and grandma say, goes. So I had to work with him on that as well. Like, no, this is your life, you make these decisions. So you never know what that could be. Obviously, mental health is an issue as well because some cultures do not look at mental health the way maybe the American culture does, which is, hey, if you need help, go get it, right? If you say, hey, I'm gonna go to a therapist, people are gonna be like, are you crazy? Are you, what's wrong with you? Are you sick? Those kind of things. So working through those barriers with your international student athletes. And obviously, a lot of these things that we talked to you about can also be similar for your students as well, right? International students. So if you are now working in athletics, please take this with your students as well. Then, of course, the American education system, which was a challenge for me, but is a challenge for a lot of international student athletes. How do you stay eligible academically? You have to have a major, right? You cannot be like other American students that you can be undeclared for the first 2 years and then declare whenever you're ready. Before you even come here, you have to have a major, right? So you're making those decisions even before you come to the United States. That's tough. Pre-professional development, which Kristal will talk about a little bit later. And then we have the student athlete identity, like, hey, sometimes because you're a student athlete, you may have to make certain sacrifices. Like, I couldn't hang out with my Indian friends at my university because our schedules didn't match. I'm going on trips every weekend to play. My schedule doesn't end till like 7 p.m. I gotta go to my dorm, get ready, for the next day, and I start my day at 5 o'clock in the morning. So when am I gonna see them? And so understanding that as well. Resources. So I had a student athlete that never realized that his tutoring appointments were free, his student athlete development events were free, mental health appointments were free. So he's like, I don't want it. It's because he didn't realize that he didn't have to pay for it, right? But unless you tell them these things, they will not know. And then, of course, we are going through the immigration law restrictions, what you can and cannot do as an international student athlete. Now you also have NIL in that mix, so how do you prepare your student athletes in that capacity as well? So taking all these things, right, what we decided at the NCAA is like, hey, let's create a handbook, right? when you come in, because one of the things I say about this handbook is, I wish I had this when I first got here, right? And it has everything, right from the difference between a penny and a quarter, you know, where do you find, like, what is rental insurance, this, that, all of the things that you need as a new person in this country, we have that. There's a QR code, but there are also hard copies out there. So I will have this QR code later on as well, but we have hard copies for you as well. So what do we do now? We know all the challenges here. What do we do with that? These are our 3 learning objectives for today, but what we decided is, like, how do we do it? We know what we need to do, how do we do it? So we broke it down between engage, equip, and empower, the 3 things that we need to focus on today. So first, engage your student athletes. Unless you build a relationship with them, you're not gonna be able to tell them what to do, right? So have a comprehensive orientation. Just because they're a student athlete and I know you wanna put them on the field right away, they need to go to physicals, whatnot, make sure they go to the international student orientation as well. So they can meet other international students at that time. They can meet the staff that's gonna be working with them there. Then have a specific international student athlete orientation as well, you know? Get to know them during that time. Engage your campus partners. All of these lists, you've seen them, you know them. At my former institution, there was a street between the athletics department and the rest of campus. And our goal was to not let that street define our relationship with campus, right? Be the first one to go on the other side. Don't go there when you need something. You know, my director would always say, you never want to call collect. So go make that relationship before you need that person. So these are your people. Build relationships with them. Connect with faculty, students, local communities with similar backgrounds. So if you have a student from a certain country and you know someone in the community or a campus, a professor, connect with them and say, hey, we have a student athlete coming from here. Can you help them transition as well? Have international student athlete dedicated programs. They need to know they're special because they are, right? Sometimes you forget. I always call international student athletes, because I was one, the stepchildren of college athletics. Sometimes people just don't know what to do with us, right? So here are your choices. Obviously, the orientation, have cultural nights, international night at sporting events. And so we did that when I was at TCU. I know you don't want to talk about that because they're a rival school now, but we're going to talk about them for a minute. But we did, at a baseball game, we invited all international student athletes. We invited international students and the international office staff, their director through the first pitch. We had a tailgate with them. All the student athletes got a flag from their country, and they were honored during a baseball game. And they were like, this is the best thing we've ever done, right? And this translates into them knowing, hey, people see us, people care, right? Holiday events. Kristal did an incredible Friendsgiving with her international students there, right? Senior nights, graduation ceremonies. Please know if your international student athletes have someone with them during their senior night or for their graduation. A lot of times their families cannot travel. Who's going to step in and be that person? Who's going to fill in the gap, you know? And then alumni events as well. If your student athletes are here after graduation, continue to have that relationship with them. I'm going to pass it on to Kristal for her piece.
Thank you.
She's good at.
All right, so we also need to equip, right? And so when it comes to academics, and you know, Ash talked about the major selection coming in, they have to declare a major, right? And so I think this starts at the recruiting process, right? When coaches, if any coaches is in the room right now, when coaches are having those conversations, kind of help them to think through what is it that they want to do. But even when they get to campus, numerous times I have international students come and they'll talk to me and they're like, hey, you know, I'm doing this major, but I'm not really sure. And the first thing I'll say is, all right, do you plan on staying here in the US when you graduate, or you plan on returning? 9 out of 10 times they're gonna tell me they're gonna return back home. And so then our job is to do research, understand, okay, what's the top job or in industry in your country back home. And then let's see what degree you could do here that would then set you up when you return back to your home country, right? So it's just those small things to kind of help them to navigate that process. And then the academic eligibility piece. Again, this starts at the recruiting process, right? Numerous times I have international students back in Jamaica and they're like, what is the EC? Back in the days, it was called the LGBT, it wasn't the LGBT Center, I can't remember what it was. It was something else. When I say that, I kind of show my age, and I'm like, oops, it's the EC. But just letting them know that, like, hey, go ahead. There's different levels. You could have an account for free. But also, EC also provides waivers, right? And they could get that $75, or maybe it's $100 now. You could get that waive if you just go through the process. So, like, educating them on that. But also when they're here, especially since COVID and the online and in-person classes, making sure that if they're an international student, they're in in-person classes. You know, they see their teammates and they're like, how do they have a full online class schedule? I want the same too. I am so sorry, but you can't, right? And this is the reason why. But making sure that you're putting them in 9 credit hours of in-person classes and anything else they could take online, right? So having that conversation with them. It also comes with the constant check-in, right? Just checking in to see how they're doing. What can I do to help you with? Do you have any issues, anything? Like, can I connect you with somebody on campus? Because granted, I'm not the expert, we're not the experts, but there's someone on campus or someone else that you could kind of direct them to provide them with different resources and answers to different questions. And then just starting to help them to plan out their career, right? Most of the times, or ISAs, they don't have a resume. And the first thing they'll say, I never worked before. When I was back home, I didn't work. Okay, let's sit down, let's have a conversation. Let's try to start creating a resume, right? From there, let's connect you with campus. Let's find ways to get you an internship on campus so you could start building that resume, right? Then when we dive into the pre-professional development, this is a great opportunity to collaborate with campus. I can't stress that enough. Like, I probably have our international office on speed dial on my phone right now, right? Because that's the person that I'm gonna go to. They have more knowledge because that's their life, day in and day out. That's what they're doing. And so that's usually the first person that I'm gonna go to ask questions and to connect our students with and to help them to figure out what's going on, right? Getting international students to attend different career fairs. Most times they'll say, well, I probably won't be able to get a job in the US. How do you know? You never went to the career fair to network and figure out what's going on, right? So just helping them to understand that. And then, of course, just having workshops with immigration lawyers. I stress that part. As you see right here in the red, don't give legal advice. I don't have the answers. I will connect you with an expert that could provide you with all the answers that you need to be successful, right? So just making sure that we're providing them with that information so they could go out and we're connecting them and helping them. And then lastly, having other specific programming, right? So whether it's financial literacy. When I first came to the US, I didn't know what a penny was, a quarter, none of that, right? I'm like, I used to be at the bus stop like, wait, I need how many quarters? You would think, I don't know how to calculate money, right? But I had no idea what was happening. And so just, again, having those conversations with them, showing them that, using the book, the student athlete handbook that Ash talked about, I gave that to our student athlete at Austin Peay so they could see that, so they could know exactly, okay, this is what a quarter is, this is what a penny is, this is what a nickel is, all that good stuff. And then do an international tax workshop, having those conversations, right? Again, I go to campus directly for them to come to our space and do these workshops to kind of help our student athletes. And then, of course, providing the opportunity for administration, coaches, and even teammates just to know what's going on, how they can support. This last semester, we had at Austin Peay, we had a unity walk. And usually a unity walk is centered around as campus, we're coming together and we're just walking, right? But this year, SAC wanted to do something different. And so what we did, we had a panel discussion where all of our we selected like 5 international student athletes to come and for them to sit and share their stories. And it was so amazing just to hear the things that they had to say, right? Students talking about wanting to go to Walmart, but don't even have a car, right? And that's something like a domestic student take for granted because you could just go anytime, right? Or wanting to live off campus, but don't have the credit score or doesn't have this bank statement or anything of that sense to be able to get an apartment off campus, right? So that was a very good opportunity for coaches, for teammates, for administration to kind of sit in that space and hear about some of the challenges. And then as a department for us to start thinking through, okay, what can we do to support these students, right? And again, don't give legal advice, right?
Can you do that? All right, so you may ask, like, hey, Ash, you worked in academics and student-athlete development. How did you end up at the NCAA? The way I started doing that was because my good friend Shay Wallach from the Office of Inclusion reached out to me when I was on campus and said, hey, you've been a student-athlete, you worked with international student-athletes. Can you help us create resources for athletic departments and administrators? So I was one of the collaborators for this. We have hard copies for you there, and QR codes will be here later on as well. But these help. These help your coaches, these help your administrators make decisions based on what they need to know about international student athletes that they may not, right? So please use them if you can. And then the last thing is empower. You know, you've engaged them, you've equipped them, now you need to empower them. One of the things people say, international student athletes say, I want to work in athletics, but no one gives me a chance. Because when it comes to getting a H-1B or a green card, they don't want to hire me, right? They don't want to do that. They will spend millions of dollars getting a head coach or an AD, but they will not spend money to get me a green card, right? Why do you need to hire international student athletes or immigrants on your staff? Number one, they're going to understand the immigration language. So when I worked on campus during COVID, and we had a lot of restrictions on who could leave the country, who could come in the country, and whatnot, I was one of the people, along with the international office, that was able to tell administrators and coaches, hey, your student athletes can do this, your student athletes should not do this, right? I cannot stop you from doing anything, but I can give you the best advice based on the immigration language that I know, and I can turn it into simplified English, right? Because I've been through that process. So, so how do you do that? Your international staff can also be a safe space for international student athletes, right? They know you have been through the same things they are going through. So you end up being their safe space, right? They're a safe space for immigration process. I will never give legal advice, but I can tell you, hey, you need to get your OPT before your last semester because it takes a long time to get it. So we're gonna start planning early on. You're gonna have to find a company that's gonna hire someone with H-1Bs. Otherwise, don't go through that entire interview process if they're not gonna do it. But unless you have been through it, you're not gonna be able to tell that to anybody else, right? So I'm gonna pass it on to Kristal for some fun activities.
Yes, let's do some Think Peer Share, right? So can y'all see this? Do I have to read it or y'all can see it? Y'all can see it? All right, so if we could get in groups and just work through this scenario that we have here, right? Just discuss how you would go about helping Sam, whether as a coach, an administrator, or a campus partner. I'm gonna give you about 2 minutes to talk that through and then we move on, all right? And for my online viewers, y'all could also just put your answer in the chat. Huh? No, no, we will talk about it.
It was it's like people shaking their heads. That's so weird thing. Yeah. All right, you got about a minute. Yeah. All right, is anyone ready to share something? I'm gonna pass the mic to you. Anybody?
Sure, well, we'll share.
Okay.
Yeah, we just talked about, again, leaning into some of the feedback and information you provided around how can we connect with the various resources on campus that can help connect SAM. And so whether that's, again, the International Student Office may have recommendations on local restaurants in the area that align with his background, sharing that, here in Boulder, we have a number of registered student organizations that have an international kind of affiliation, and connecting him with those student organizations so that kind of creates some connections as well.
Thank you. Anybody?
We looked at it that each of those different roles, the coach, administrator, and campus partner, have different responsibilities in terms of their impact on the day-to-day of the student athlete, in this case Sam. Obviously, the coach is going to have a bigger impact on the day-to-day, as we talked about being a ISA of the scheduling, their ability to access. I think we made the joke like the pizza and cereal at the end of the night. Can you move the schedule? And it's something that we discussed in the other earlier session was, a decision you make for one student may benefit everyone without you necessarily realizing. So if you could, have a poll, a panel, whatever you want to call it, of can we adjust the schedule? Because, sometimes as coaches, you might just say, this is the time that it's always been for, practice time. Obviously, sometimes it also is based on the scheduling of other sports. So, if you're, one sport, can you talk with other coaches in your community, say, can we, switch different times? Because I have students who, might want to call home earlier, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, especially on the coach side of things, you can, utilize your role to just understand your athletes' schedule a little better and how they can benefit from those changes.
Thank you. So as Kristal shares the second scenario, I'm gonna say also a ton of professors are from different countries. So even if they're not from the specific country that the student athlete is from, you can always connect them with someone that has a similar culture, that if they can just get one good home cooked meal, right, makes a difference, a ton of difference. So I'm gonna pass it on to Kristal for the next scenario.
Yes. So again, this is the second one, last one, I promise. Right? Where Renee is now a graduating senior. She's also an international student, and she is passionate about working in college athletics after graduation, but as an international student, she faces visa restrictions that may impact that job opportunity in the US. So again, in your group, just talking through how, whether as a coach, an administrator, or a campus partner, you would be able to assist Renee with navigating this.
Okay, you got a minute. All right, do we have any takers, any brave souls here? I think I know someone who can answer this question, so I'm not going to pick on her yet. But anybody else? Nikki, I'm going to pass the mic to you. Come on.
Oh, I don't like the mic. So I'm international, and I was a student athlete, so I did go through these steps. So for me, it's always like I tell them about my journey and how I went about it, which was doing OPT for 1 year after I graduated, and then I went to grad school and was a GA in college athletics. And then after that, I did another OPT, and then that led to the H-1B. But like I know of like sites like the NCAA jobs where you can see all the GAs. It's the best way to find some kind of opportunity working in college athletics. Other way I would tell them is talk to their coaches, because if you are really good at your sport, they know other coaches who might need GAs or interns or somebody like that. So I usually use my own background. Otherwise, I would probably send them to maybe international student office. I don't know. It's just different because of who I am. Yeah.
Well, anybody else? Okay. Yeah. All right. There you go.
I just want to reiterate, send them to this international student office because they're the folks that will help with the work authorization, OPT's work authorization for students, for anyone who doesn't know. And then they might be able to kind of just know a little bit about what the H-1B world looks like, even if they can't advise on the private sector H-1Bs.
Thank you. And send them to the website that has the information as well. That also helps. But also, I just want to give a shout out. Nikki is a great resource if you're at Colorado, because she's been through that process along with me, so we've known each other through that whole thing. But advocate for them. If they are the ones who are up for H-1B and they want to work here or anywhere else that you're working at, advocate for them to have that opportunity to do that. So that would be my last one. But just want to put this picture out there, and that's because if you saw the very first picture, we were in our gear playing our respective sports, right? And then a couple of years later, I'm not going to put how many years, we are here as administrators, right? And it's been so cool to see Kristal's journey, and I hope for her to see mine as well, to be able to be where we are today. So it takes someone giving us an opportunity at the end of the day. So I'm going to open up for questions, so we have enough time to answer any questions you may have, and our contact information is here. Yes.
Thank you. I know it's going back to the beginning of the presentation where you showed the differences in the trends of ISAs as well as the different sports that either the Division I level or Division II level, and kind of the breakdown of how many of those sports are, how many ISAs are in each one. Is there different challenges or pros, whatever wording you want to put on it, to different sports that kind of are more central to those? So, for example, is there Division II, or rowing, right? Is there going to be a different challenge for those athletes sometimes than an ice hockey athlete? Right. Is there any examples that you can kind of think of where it's like these athletes are more, here's the situation that they have issues with versus another one?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I would say every sport is different, so you're going to have those challenges. Their schedules are different, the expectations are different, and even between divisions, right? Division I rowing could be very different than Division II rowing, right? So I would say the expectations typically is what throws student athletes off as well, because they may have friends from their country that are doing the same sport at different institution, so that institution expectations, coaches are different as well. So absolutely it's different, but when it comes to sometimes Division I and Division II as well, depending on the resources that someone can pour into as well. So that, I would say, is something to consider.
I would just say the resource piece, I think, would be big. Like for me, I'm at Austin Peay, and we're a limited resource institution. So the things, we have great ideas, and some of the things that we want to do, like budget-wise, we just can't. And so within my role, that's where I have to be creative with thinking of ways of getting grants and thinking of ways to find, to collaborate on campus, to then create programming for international student athletes so they could have that space and come together. But I think it's just really looking at where you are and the needs of the students. I think one of the biggest things I always tell anyone that I speak with is have a conversation with them, right? And we talked about that at first, because some things that we probably think is cool, they'll be like, no, don't want that, right? Like I learned that this year, they're like, we like when we just come together and eat food and have a good time and get to know each other. So they don't always want a structured program, right? So I think just having time to just have conversations with them and kind of see what is it that they want.
Anybody else? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I work here at Rec Center, and we have a thriving sport club program, and so 30-plus teams that compete for national championships. We have a number of international students who are here for our cycling program, triathlon, hockey, and just sharing that, you know, they even get less resource support than your varsity athletes. So I can, what I like about it here is just the resources that we can provide them around what you were sharing as examples. You're new to this community, new to this country. I could see some transition of just sharing some of the documents that you're sharing with our international students. And I'd also say too that we have a lot of international students who drop in here at Rec Center and play badminton and pickleball and other sports, and that's their community, and how do we continue to support that? And I would share, we said, let's get some cricket going on over here. And, you know, and all of a sudden it was like, bam, and just the excitement and energy around that we put together some cricket, and we're gonna continue to do that, so thank you.
I'll also add, like, when I showed you that sporting event we did, at TCU baseball, we had international student athletes come, and we invited international students as well. We gave them free tickets. Some of them said that was their first time at a baseball game. They'd been at the institution for 2 or 3 years, right? Because if you, one, are not invited, or if you don't have any interest in that sport, you're not gonna go. And then the first time they went, they're like, oh, this is actually fun. So then now you have students actually attending your sporting events, getting together and going together as well. So that makes a difference because you're opening that door for them as well. Okay. Any other questions, comments? No? I'm going to share this screen here. I know lots of QR codes, but just want to point out my good friend Shay Wallach. He is the Associate Director of Inclusion at the NCAA. His core area of work is international student athletes. So even though you see me here, that's what he does for the most part, and I just assist him sometimes because I have that experience as an international student athlete. That's his information. This is the QR code for the handbook and the 2 resources, and then a QR code for the presentation survey, if you can fill that out. So we know if this worked, what can we do better, and what else you would need from us. Thank you.